This is an unconstitutional war. It's an illegal war. He didn't go to Congress. He didn't go to the UN. He didn't go before the American people. And that's why at this point, 27% of Americans, only 27% of Americans approve of these actions. And I don't have any confidence that Donald Trump has any sort of plan. Maybe he has concepts of a plan, but he does not have any sort of plan.
Just to mention the other presidents that have gone in without congressional approval are Biden, Obama, Clinton, George H.W. Reagan. Yeah. So I would be more upset that Congress has ceded this power than mad that the president didn't check with Congress.
Well, I'm mad about all of it. I think we can. Quite honestly. We'll be right back.
Yeah.
All right, so we got to talk about what just happened on The View because they're sitting up there getting ready to discuss the president bombing Iran and this whole conflict we're dealing with right now. And I'm not even going to lie to you. This was actually somewhat of a good show that actually has some sense in it, common sense to be exact. And I don't say that often about The View or the lunch ladies, as I like to call them. And the reason is the reason it was actually watchable for once is because they finally had somebody on the stage who was willing to defend the Trump administration like they actually mean it. Not the watered down, nervous, let me distance myself just enough so I can still get invited back type of energy. And I'm talking about someone who will actually stand in it. And that person was Elisabeth Hasselbeck. Now compare that to Alyssa Farah Griffin. Alyssa gets up there and half the time it feels like she's trying to prove she's not really with Trump anymore. And it's like when somebody switches friend groups in high school and now they overcompensate so the new group accepts them. And that's the vibe. But Elizabeth, completely different energy. She was actually defending the president's position in a way that made sense, step by step, without apologizing for it. And you could feel the tension because that's not what the table is used to. The View is usually like 5 people nodding at each other, and it's like a group project where everybody already agreed on the answer before the discussion even started. So when you throw in somebody who actually pushes back, who actually says, no, here's why this decision makes sense, suddenly the conversation gets real. Suddenly it's not just echo chamber talk. And I'm sitting there like, why don't they do this more often? Because let's be honest, the show would be 10 times better if they had a real conservative woman on there consistently, not a placeholder, not somebody who's halfway in and halfway out, lukewarm, I like to call it, but a real Trump supporter who can articulate the argument clearly. That balance actually makes the conversation stronger and it forces everyone to sharpen their points. It's like sports, right? If one team doesn't play defense, the game is boring. But when both sides actually compete, now it's interesting. And that's what we saw here. Real back and forth, real pushback, real disagreement. And I think Americans in America, we need to get back to that type of productive dialogue. We don't always have to agree. We can agree to disagree, depending on the situation, because every situation and conversation is situational. But if you have to come down to a solution, I take this approach. How about, okay, we see who it affects the most, and then we obviously go with the person's solution that it affects the most, or we meet each other halfway. Or lastly, I like to say, how about we try it one way and do another? But we can agree to disagree. But if it comes to a solution needed to be necessarily taking place, like I said, you have 3 options on how to approach it. Common sense, right? But I got to tell you, right? I actually enjoyed this conversation on The View. That's rare, right? Reacting to The View, I usually tune out. I hate and I actually dread watching them because it's constant nonsensical nonsense. But usually I'm like, here we go again. And then I just tune out. But this time I was like, okay, this is what the show could be if they weren't so one-sided all the time. Now, do I think Elizabeth is getting invited back after defending Trump that strongly? I don't know. I damn sure doubt it. That's just a mic drop for me. Something tells me they're not going to love that energy long term, right? Because when you actually defend the president without flinching, that shakes up the dynamic. But that's exactly why it worked. So yeah, we're going to react. We're going to react to this segment because there was some genuinely good back and forth, something you rarely see on that show. And if they were smart, they'll realize this is the formula. But until then, let's go ahead and get into it and check it out.
I don't think they're going to support it.
if the President of the United States does not make a case and clearly explain why we went in there and what the end game is. And look, I'm not an Iran expert, and I'm not going to pretend that because I spent 2 days watching former generals on CNN explaining this, I understand the Middle East. But I am a regular American, and I can tell you my reaction, and it was mixed feelings, because when I heard that the Ayatollah was dead, I shared in the celebration of so many Iranians around the world, and including in the United States. I thought of Mahsa Amini, the journalist who was stopped by the morality police and cruelly, brutally killed. I thought of Vida Rabbani. I thought of my friend Tom Ganyan, whose uncle was executed by the Ayatollah in '79. And that is one part. But I also have such anxiety. I am furious that we are going into war yet again without congressional approval. I am furious that the American people have not been brought into this. I am furious that we are doing this alone. Yes, Israel is part of it. But I look at Donald Trump and I look at Netanyahu, and I see two leaders who I think politically they benefit from war. Netanyahu is facing criminal charges for corruption back home. Donald Trump is facing very low numbers and Epstein files that are not, and we will not let go away. And so,
You know what I'm getting to? I'm getting to the point, and I'm dead serious about this, where if somebody automatically screams Epstein every single time any political topic comes up, I'm starting to think you're just not that bright. I'm sorry, because at this point, Epstein has basically become IQ test, a common sense test, if you have critical thinking type of test, just all in together. Because here's the thing: not everything is a distraction. Not every single decision made in foreign policy is some secret code for we are hiding the Epstein list. That's not how real life works. That's not how government works. That's not how war works. This administration has been more transparent on the Epstein than any administration we ever had. Why haven't the Democrats, when the Joe Biden administration took place and Kamala Harris, let out the Epstein files, right? So I find it very, very ironic. They continue to condemn the person who obviously released the Epstein files with no problem whatsoever. And let's rewind history for a second, because people act like they forgot. It was the first Trump administration, when Trump first got in office, actually put Epstein in prison. That didn't happen under Obama. It didn't happen under Biden. It happened under Trump. That's just a fact. And now we had millions of documents released, millions. Think about that. If you dump out millions of pages of paperwork, emails, flight logs, testimonies, court documents, and there's no smoking gun or any type of, smoke for Trump, at some point common sense has to kick in. If there was something explosive, if there was something undeniable proof, why didn't she just say it, right? Why didn't she just mention it just now? We're not going to forget the Epstein files, but you're not saying anything specific to not forget besides Epstein files. So my whole point is, if there's something explosive, if there was something undeniable proof, undenying proof, you don't think it would be blasted everywhere 24/7? If the proof was so undeniable, if there's proof you can't seem to be specific on in any way, shape, or form, but just make a broad blank statement of, Epstein files. You don't think every media outlet that can't stand the guy would have left with that for months? You think they would have let go of that? Like, come on. We got plenty of names tied to Democrats. We've seen that. But this mythical gotcha on Trump, it hasn't materialized. And at some point, you have to consider the possibility that maybe it doesn't exist. I'm open-minded here. If evidence comes out, fine, show it. And I'm happy to see that. And I'm open to the possibility of being wrong, is my point. But I haven't seen nothing where nobody can pinpoint anything to the simple fact besides just saying we can't forget the Epstein files. I hear that more than anything. But you don't get to just assume guilt forever because it fits your narrative. And that's the problem with individuals. People want to convict people in a court of public opinion, but they're actually not standing on the facts. And that's just not how logic works. That's not how evidence works. Now, let's talk about this Iran situation. Because people are saying, he's bombing Iran to distract from Epstein. That is such a lazy low-level take and coward way of leadership, in my opinion. And Trump doesn't have any of those characteristics of not being, of instead of not being courageous, right, in releasing Epstein files and calling things for what they are. I haven't seen Trump possess the characteristics of a cowardly individual who runs and flee and creates distractions. And what type of leader would that be to uphold and be American first and make America great again, which is Trump's slogan, MAGA, right? And mantra. So that would be very contradicting. But Trump doesn't possess any of those cowardly characteristics. He says what it is. And that's why he gets the ultimate respect. But I'm saying all that to say that it's such lazy work and low level take. If you believe that Trump is bombing Iran to distract from Epstein, that's like saying your boss reorganized the company because he didn't want to talk about a rumor in the break room. Countries don't launch military operations to distract from Twitter drama. War is expensive. War is risky. War is unpopular, especially when there wasn't some massive event like 9/11 that emotionally unites the country overnight. And let's be honest, this is not going to be popular. It's not going to be popular with the no new wars crowd who voted pacifically because they were tired of Iraq and Afghanistan. It's not going to be popular with leftists who weirdly act like the Iranian regime are misunderstood victims when we are talking about an authoritarian government that jails descendants and funds chaos in the region. War is never a feel good policy. There's no parade at the beginning. So the idea that he needs this because his numbers are low makes no damn sense. If anything, this is politically risky for Trump, which tells me this isn't about distraction. It's about strategy. So now where am I at? Right? I'm in the wait and see mode. I always like to wait and see and let the facts come out. I'm not cheerleading blindly. I'm skeptical but cautiously optimistic. And that's the honest position because history tells us regime change in the Middle East can go very wrong. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, right? We've seen um, how messy that can get. It can turn into a decade-long fest or a long headache fast. So yeah, I'm aware this could look more like those situations than something quick and clean. But here's the difference: this administration has shown repeatedly that they operate with the layers of planning. It's not just Plan A; it's Plan B, Plan C, Plan D. It's contingency after contingency. And when you're playing chess, you don't just think about your first move. You think about what happens 3 moves later if the other side reacts. That's like me, for example, with my child. If I'm teaching my child for the long-term effects, so he continue to be a young man, a productive man, being civil in society, let alone be an asset to his community, I'm not just going to feel good and teach him in that moment and then later not be consistent with my teachings. It won't be effective at that point, and I won't be an effective parent to instill in him what he needs to be a productive American citizen, let alone uphold American values and be a great young man, right? So I'm saying all that to say, to tie it back to Trump and this administration having a Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, contingency after contingency, playing chess and thinking long term. That's what matters. Not rather the first strike works perfectly, but rather there's a structure in place if things shift. And if, and this is a big if this is successful, if the regime in Iran is actually weakened or removed with minimal casualties and minimal blowback, then we're talking about something historic. We're talking about reshaping the global balance of power because Iran isn't just some random country, right? It's tied into Russia and China strategically. Weaken Iran, you indirectly weaken their influence. Now stack that with what's been happening with Venezuela. Imagine if over time Iran, Venezuela, maybe even Cuba, authoritarian regimes that have been thorns in America's side for decades, start collapsing or reforming without massive American casualties. If that happens, it would absolutely cement Trump as one of the most consequential presidents, or I should say consequential presidents of, consequential presidents of the 21st century from a foreign policy standpoint. Right? Consequential presidents of the 21st century. I'm gonna repeat that again for the people in the back. And I'm all for it. And I pray that it happens. And that's not hype. That's just understanding geopolitical leverage in simple terms. It would be like knocking out multiple key players on the opposing team without losing your starters. That changes the entire game. Now, is that guaranteed? No. Is it likely to be smooth? Probably not. That's why I am cautious. But I'm not going to sit here and scream distraction. Like that explains everything. That's just lazy thinking. I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm willing to watch how it plays out. And if it works, I'll say it worked. If it fails, I'll say it failed. But I'm not going to prejudge it based on conspiracy theories when we have zero hard evidence to support them. Like I say, I like to wait and see and let the facts be the facts. Skeptical? Yes. Blindly cynical? No. I'm giving the president the opportunity to execute, and we'll judge it based on results. That's the grown-up position here.
You know, I think that's where a lot of Americans are. That we, you know, we're happy that the Ayatollah is dead. He's brutal regime. And let me just say one more thing. Trump has, I think, changed since Venezuela. I think Venezuela, I think he thought Venezuela was incredibly successful. And he's been making comparisons with what happened in Venezuela with what's happening in Iran. I don't know Iran, I know Venezuela. Maduro was a piddly little third world dictator. Venezuela is not Iran. Iran has terrorist cells all over the world that they can activate. Venezuela was one and done. They went in there, they extricated Maduro, and that was the end of that. This certainly is not that. He's already told us it could be 4 or 5 more weeks of strikes. We are seeing retaliation by the Iranians that the Venezuelans didn't have the ability to do. So I think that he's in love with this idea of being the conqueror and the emperor after Venezuela. He's got this Napoleonic complex. He thinks he's Alexander the Great. Right. But Venezuela is not Iran.
I mean, I so respect where you come from, Anna, on this and your ability to like broadly think about it and have heart in it. I also think it's very easy to have political concussion at this point where, and I actually had a concussion a year ago, one of the side effects was losing depth perception, where you can't see the depth of what is going on because you're just being constantly barraged by information or political opinion and now war. Understandably, the Americans are fatigued with the idea of war. We get that, right? We sit here and we know the repercussions of it, including the death. And I do want to say our hearts are with the families of those fallen soldiers. Your sacrifice will not be squandered. This war will be won. I do think it's threefold. One, we have 47 million Iranian women who now have a hope of freedom. That's a good thing, okay? We have an disgusting terrorist regime ended. And the people finally have hope to create their own nation again. Okay, so that's the hope. When we zoom out in geopolitical realm, okay, which is not my specialty either, but I have a ton of friends in the military who specialize in this. We see that this is actually avoiding a boots on the ground war with China when we are able to choke their oil supply, and the president and our military are exemplary in doing so right now. They've cut the oil supply from Venezuela, and they've now reduced it and choked the oil supply to China in Iran. And now what that does is presumably prevent China from having an absolute stronghold on the globe. So this is a strategic move geopolitically that we may not fully understand, but I absolutely trust that this is best for our nation, and we should be America first.
What makes you think that the regime...
Let me rewind that a little bit.
But I absolutely trust that this is best for our nation, and we should be America first.
What makes you...
Boom. Boom. That right there was exactly why she's not getting invited back. She hit it right on the nail. Nail in the coffin. Phenomenal. Articulated herself. Shout out to Hasselbeck. Shout out to Elisabeth Hasselbeck. Sorry, I botched her name. Elisabeth Hasselbeck. There we go. Elisabeth Hasselbeck hit that on the nail right there. You think they're going to keep bringing somebody on who actually says this stuff out loud? No chance. Alyssa Farah Griffin would never give that take. Never. She would never. She would tap dance around and give word salad. She's lukewarm. She'll talk a little bit, defend Trump, and then go out of it and be understanding. But you got to pick a side and you got to stand on it. You fall for something or you stand for nothing. Alyssa Farah Griffin would have danced around it, softened it up, put a little bow on it so nobody at the table felt uncomfortable. But what Elizabeth just did, that was probably one of the best takes. It is one of the best takes I've seen on this show when it comes to The View, when it comes to something serious. Because she laid it out clearly. This is not about the Epstein files. It's not about some secret distraction. And it's not, we are fighting a war just for Israel. That talking point drives me crazy because it's such an oversimplified, surface level way to look at something that's way bigger than that. Is Israel benefiting from this? Of course. They want the Iranian regime weakened. That's obvious. But guess what? They're not the only ones. Our other allies in the region wanted to. Countries in Europe wanted to. That's why you're seeing the UK, France, and others slowly, quietly lining up in support of that. And they're not screaming in front of rooftops because their politicians don't have the guts to go tell their voters the truth. But behind closed doors, they agree. They all agree. Right? Ain't that a typical politician? Say one thing in public, but nod heads in private, but agree. Right? And they pander to their voter base or their base that strongly supports them to stay in power. But Trump is just the one, only one, blunt enough to say, yeah, we're hitting them. We're bombing the shit out of them, as he would say. And yeah, regime change is the goal. And I respect that. You don't have to like it. You don't even have to support it. A lot of times people don't like how Trump articulates himself. It's not the fancy, typical politician, but he's not a typical politician. He's a businessman. But I can say you got to respect, if you look past your emotions and be objective, what he's saying has sense and makes sense. And every time Trump says something, you have to pay attention to a man that will say something that makes no damn sense, that holds no value, that's not a mic drop, versus one that may not articulate the way you may want him to, but when he says something, it means something. I'm going with that individual because when they say something, you better shut the hell up and listen because they're not just saying it for fun. They mean business. And that's where respect come in because you take it serious. So, like I said, you don't have to support Trump way of speaking, but at least it's honest. And what I can't stand is when leaders pretend they're doing one thing while secretly doing another. And if you're going to take a massive move on the world stage, just say it with your chest. Then we can debate it. Then we can argue it. But don't lie about it. And what she explained, Elisabeth Hasselbeck, and this is the part people miss, is that this is geopolitical chess. That just means it's about the power on the world stage. It's about Russia. It's about China. It's about resources. It's always about resources, trade routes, influence. And every major war in modern history has been about power and positioning. That's not new. That's not shocking. That's how global politics works. Two things can be true at the same time. It can help Israel and help the United States. And that's called mutual interest. It's like two co-workers, both wanting the same lazy manager going. You're not doing it for each other. You just both benefit from the outcome. I don't get why people struggle with that concept. And let me be clear so nobody twists this. I'm neutral on Israel. I'm not waving a flag for them and I'm not demonizing them either. I don't like everything our politicians do on their behalf. I do think sometimes we cater too much. And I absolutely cannot stand when someone makes a legitimate I cannot stand when someone makes a legitimate criticism of Israel and immediately gets labeled anti-Semitic. That just shuts down the real conversation. And I hate that. But at the same time, I'm not buying this idea that America only moves because Israel pulls the strings or that Trump is being controlled by anybody. Just look at the guy's personality for 5 seconds. Does he strike you as someone who takes order from anyone? He's been in the public eye for decades. That man does what he wants. And you may hate that about him or love it, but control him, I don't see it. I just don't. So we can disagree on Israel. That's fine. We could disagree on that. And I'm not extreme one way or the other. I'm looking at it objectively, taking my feelings out of it, and I'm stepping back and saying, what are the actual incentives here? Who benefits? What's the strategy? That's it. I'm not trying to be pro-Israel. I'm being a grown adult here because a grown man and a grown woman is solution-based, right? So I'm not trying to be pro-Israel enough or anti-Israel enough to satisfy anybody online. I'm trying to be logical. And if that makes some people uncomfortable because I'm not picking a tribal team, so be it. I'd rather be objective, rational than emotional about it. Anyway, let's continue.
I think
Hold
that
on,
the
Anna.
regime has ended.
That was
Let Sunny do
well,
what
that
she's
was
doing.
The
that was
leader
one of
is the absolute Ayatollah is dead.
well, but I'm
The
old
people-
enough
well,
to
okay,
remember.
ND,
I'm
I get
old
it.
enough to remember
Let's not do this
1989.
crosstalk thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Finish your sentence.
I was just going to say, you know, the bottom line is that this is an illegal war. This is an unconstitutional war. Only Congress can wage war and declare war. And so that's the first thing. I think we have to call a thing a thing. So this is an illegal war. This is a presidential war. I will also say, I think what Anna was about to say, did the regime really change? No. At this point, Donald Trump has come out and said, I had some choices for who would lead, but they are dead now, too. And so now you have people that are in Iran picking their own people. So you don't have a regime change, just like you don't have a regime change in Venezuela. Also, what I'll say is it's very, very easy to start a war, right? Without a plan. It's very difficult to end a war. We've seen in Russia invading Ukraine, thinking that it was going to be over. It's 5 years later, 610,000 Russians are either maimed or killed. 1.2 million Russians maimed or killed. We've got 600,000 Ukrainians maimed or killed. That war is not over. I thought this was going to be the president of peace. I thought this president wanted to win a Nobel Peace Prize for peace. That is not what I'm seeing. I am not seeing America first. I think people that voted for Trump, I was not one of them. I think you were. Those people wanted America first.
I proudly voted for Trump because the alternative was not great, and we would absolutely be under the wrong power if the alternative.
But let me just finish.
I'm going to stop everybody because we're going to go and come back.
All right. I'm going to skip a little bit ahead. But before we get to that, let me say this about the whole Ukraine and Russia situation. And I already know this is where people start clutching their pearls, and I'm going to say it anyway. If Trump was in Vladimir Putin's position right now, do you honestly think Zelensky would still be walking around and giving speeches and doing photo ops? You got to ask yourself. I don't. I just don't. And that's not me cheering anything on. That's me being real about how different these two personalities are. And this is why I get pushback when I say I don't think Putin is really the guy he say he is. I don't really think Putin is big dog, right? As they make him out to be when it comes to the Western media trying to make him big dog. They talk about him like he's the second coming of Vladimir Lenin or Joseph Stalin. You know, the guys over there in Russia who was actual dictators and believe force to the end, all the way to the end, full force, full-fledged, nonstop, right? But like they try to make Vladimir Putin like he's those guys, like he's this unstoppable, ultra ruthless mastermind playing 4D chess where everybody else is asleep. And I'm not seeing that. I'm just not. Is he aggressive? Yes. Is he strategic? Sure. But this myth that he's on the level of those old Soviet dictators, Soviet Union dictators who ruled with pure iron fist, I don't buy it. And here's where it gets uncomfortable for people. I actually think Trump is more of that ruthless instinct than Putin does. I think Trump has more of that ruthless in him. Like I believe he has the, how can I put this? Yeah, I think he has that more ruthless instinct than Putin does, because the difference is Trump operates inside the American system. And our system, the Constitution, Congress, the courts, the military chain of command, elections, all of that acts like guardrails. It's like having a powerful sports car, but you're driving in the neighborhood with speed bumps everywhere. For better or worse, those speed bumps slow you down, and that's what checks and balances are. They're designed to prevent one person from having unlimited power. So even if Trump has that end it immediately mindset, he can't just snap his fingers and make people disappear. Putin doesn't have the same constraints, but here's the irony. Even without those constraints, this war is still dragging on. And that says something, because if Trump were in the exact same position, same authority, same lack of internal resistance when it comes to the chain of command or the separation of powers with the Supreme Court and things like that in Congress, I don't think this would still be going on 3 years later. I think Trump would say bomb the shit out of him in regards of Ukraine if he was in Vladimir Putin's position running Russia. And I think it would have been decisive and fast. Look at what just happened with Iran's leadership. That wasn't a warning shot. That was systematic. That was, we are not just cutting off one head. We are making sure no other head pops up tomorrow And that's cold. That's ruthless. And I'm not even saying that as praise or criticism. I'm just calling it what it is. It's decisive. I don't see that same level of decisiveness from Putin. Maybe he doesn't have the capability. Maybe his military isn't as strong as people assumed. Maybe it's corruption. Maybe it's logistics. I don't know. But what I do know is if you're supposedly this global supervillain mastermind, you don't get stuck in a drawn out grind like this. And that's why I don't view Russia as the massive, unstoppable threat of the United States the same way people in the West frame it. To Europe, I understand why they're nervous. Geography matters. When your neighborhood has a history of rolling tanks across borders, you're going to feel a way about it. But for us, United States of America, across an ocean, with the military power we have, I'm just not convinced Russia is this, how can I put this? This existing monster, this instinctual monster. That doesn't mean they're weak. It just means the hype doesn't match the performance. And again, my opinion, it's just my opinion. If Trump were in Putin's shoes with with that level of authority, I don't think the Ukraine war would still be happening. I think it would be wrapped up one way or another a long time ago. And that's not me romanticizing war. That's me saying some leaders drag things out and some leaders move fast and end it. Agree or disagree, that's just how I see it. But let me know what you guys think about that. Do you think Trump stands on business? And if Trump was in Vladimir Putin's shoes, he would stand more on business than Vladimir Putin ending the Russian-Ukraine war a long time ago before even it wouldn't even be able to drag out this long. Let me know in the comments below. Give this video a big thumbs up and help crush that YouTube algorithm. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and join the family. If you're already part of the family, I appreciate you for rocking with us and being part of the family and rocking with me and just watching this video. I appreciate you for rocking with me. I hope you get some value from this video. And let's finish up here.
I mean, right now, I think there's probably not a lot of popular support here in this country, purely because it's a bit shocking. Obviously, no one was brought in on this decision. I do think that having the supreme leader killed and not in Iran is a good thing. This is the largest state-sponsored terrorist nation that has forever fueled China, Russia, as you pointed out, Elizabeth. And I think the protests that have been going on for months, the thousands of Iranians who have lost their lives, this is the largest protesting since 1979, which is a big deal. Now, I don't know if the handing over their country is as clean as it sounds. Oftentimes when you wipe out regimes, which we don't know for sure, Sonny, although 40 of the top leaders have been reported killed, so they've definitely decapitated the country right now. What happens next will really depend on how coordinated the people can be. Because remember, they've been suppressed for years. The Iranian people are amazing and they deserve to live outside of this leader and this regime. But they also have had media blackouts. Any dissidents, they can be killed. They'll just be killed. How well they speak to each other when they have facial recognition they've been using to identify protesters and then further eliminate them. So I just don't think we know yet how long this looks or what it looks like. But there are some benefits to this country if indeed it could go smoothly. It just remains a cautious optimism.
Well, I just think
There you have it.
we all have to remember that because we don't know what's coming next. We don't know how safe women are going to be. We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, at the end of the day, this really just comes down to results, right? That's it. Not vibes, not headlines, not Twitter threads, results. If this turns out positive, I pray that it does. If it's successful and if it actually stabilizes the region, weakens our adversaries, minimizes casualties, and doesn't turn into a 20-year mess, the American people are going to look back and say, okay, that was worth it. That's just how people work. When something works, people forgive the risk. When something fails, they don't care what the plan was. They just see the damage. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. And that's why I keep saying, I'm just in a wait and see mode. I understand the reasoning behind it. I can follow the logic step by step. I'm not confused about the strategy, but I'm also not naive. And I know how these things can go sideways. So yeah, I'm skeptical, but cautiously optimistic. And part of that optimism, if I'm being honest, is based on the Iranian people themselves, right? Historically speaking, so yeah, I'm skeptical but cautiously optimistic. And part of that optimism, if I'm being honest, is based on the Iranian people themselves. Historically speaking, Persians have a deep intellectual tradition. And we're talking about a civilization that gave the world advancements in math, science, engineering, philosophy. And this isn't some backward society. These are educated, capable people who have been living under a hard-line religious regime for decades. It's not that the population is the problem, it's the leadership. And if there's ever a window where that leadership structure cracks, that there's at least a chance, a real chance, that the people could build something more stable And that's the hope. That's what people are betting on now. Hope isn't a guarantee. Intelligence on average doesn't automatically equal political stability. And we've seen smart countries make terrible decisions before. But if you're looking for reasons this might turn out differently than Iraq or Afghanistan, that's one of them. And there's a stronger internal foundation there. So, yeah, I have hope. I do. But hope isn't the same thing as blind faith. That's why I'm not out here making bold predictions like I got a crystal ball. Anybody telling you right now they know exactly how this ends is guessing straight up. And this is geopolitics, not a scripted TV show. There are too many moving parts, internal factions, outside powers like Russia and China, economic pressure, regional reactions, and you don't know how it ends in year one, right? You barely know in year three. Realistically, you judge something like this 5 years down the line, and that's when you can actually look back and say, okay, did this stabilize things or did this create another disaster? So my position is simple: relax, don't panic, don't declare victory, don't declare doom. Watch it unfold, evaluate based on outcomes, not emotions, and when the results come in, then we can have the real conversation about whether it was worth it or not, and that's the grown way to approach it. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in the next one. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. On that note, family, as always, peace.